So I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question for you, John. You have a sales tax in the city?
Yes. In fact, great question. We are sales tax based. Our property taxes, I guess you guys would kill for them. Our sales tax burden is about 8.5%. Then we have a lodging tax, which is about 3%. So our total tax burden is about 11.5% when you come in to Breckenridge, have a meal, or stay at a hotel, or whatever the case may be. But in the scheme of things in Colorado, we're in the middle of the pack. Denver's even higher. Their lodging tax is like 5%. But compared to Alaska, you guys don't have a sales tax, I understand.
Does that sales tax include the state tax?
Yep. Yeah, the 8.5 that you pay when you buy something in Breckenridge, about 4% of it is state, about 2% of it is county, and about 2.5% of it comes to the town of Breckenridge. And interestingly, I don't know why it happened, but in 1974 or 5, the county made a deal with all the towns and said, if you provide these services, we'll give you a whole bunch of your sales tax back. So we get a big bump back from the county government. But we don't have to do social services, they do, so it's hard on them. But we do all the policing, fire protection, you name it, so, snow removal, all that stuff. We also have a real estate transfer tax, which is now illegal in the state of Colorado, of 1% on every transaction. And that brings it about $5 million a year. We don't use it on housing, we actually use it on capital improvement projects like the rec center renovation, performing arts center, things like that. And I brought it up this afternoon, and I don't know if it's legal or not to enact that in Anchorage or not, but Aspen did it, Telluride did it, and we did it all back in the 80s, and it was, that option was removed in 1992, but we are grandfathered and still get funds from that.
And Breckenridge is the size right now, about how many?
We're about 4,500. Like I said, we were 1,300 when I moved there in 1980. We annexed a bunch of properties, so some of it's growth through annexation, but much of it is new construction. Yeah.
What's the budget for this town?
About 22 million that's the revenue from sales tax. We have a bunch of special funds too, but that's basically what we bring in and we have to spend. Yeah.
Got a fantastic quiver of different things you're doing. It's awesome. My question for you is, the very entry-level people, the lift crew, the table servers, do these programs reach down far enough to get them?
Nope, they really don't. I wish they did.
So how do we deal with those guys?
Well, one thing, it's that political will thing. You know, I made a mistake on my first term in town council, 98 to 2002. I was all about home ownership. You know, that's the piece of the rock in Breckenridge, Colorado. So our first few endeavors besides that Pinewood 1 were the Wellington neighborhood. That's 150 units. Then phase 2 was another 100 units. Now they're in the middle of another 125 units, all for sale. But your clerk at a retail shop that's making $22,000 a year can't afford that. The Light Tech project is all studios and 1-bedrooms. They can kind of afford that. We still need to come down into that 40% AMI area, and we're not there yet. We're building a project with the county, and that was a government-government partnership that will hit some of that 40% AMI, but there's only 26 units. And then we're building another project called the Denison Placer, which will open in June. On our own, we thought we were going to get LIHTC financing. We didn't get it. And so our cost went from, I think, 7 million to 16 or 17 million. And it's not a lottery, but it's very competitive. And Grace was telling me that you even have less money in Alaska to deal with than we do. So it's very competitive, and we lost, but our town council, it was one of the last things I did when I was mayor. We just said, screw it, we got to do this. You know, we're in the ground, we got to build this. So that will do some of the 40%ers. But if you just do the math, if you're not supposed to spend more than 30% of your income, and if you're making say you're making $20,000 a year, that means you're not supposed to spend more than $6,600 a year on your housing. Well, if you divide that by 12, that's $550, $600 a month.
Ski area have dorms, how do they take care of it?
Well, I showed you that one. They have that 180 units in Breckenridge that they built on their dime. They spent $18 million on it, to their credit. And so they are contributing. They're also looking at perhaps some master leases with some of our properties where they, you know, basically lease 10 units here or 5 units there. But it's the ski area employees that really, they're the kids that sleep 5 to an apartment, roommates until they're 26 years old. They suck it up. You know, we got kids sleeping in cars in November and December because they can't afford the first and last month lease or lease payment. They can't afford the security deposit. They have to work for a month or two, so they live in their cars or they surf on couches, just like the kids do here. And then in January, they're looking and they have money in their pocket because they've been working. So it's a conundrum. My wife is part of a very philanthropic organization. It's our only one called Summit Foundation. She's created a program. Instead of all the rentals going to VRBOs and Airbnbs, which has been a problem for us, she put together this program which she goes out and finds homeowners or condo owners who are sick and tired of the headaches of short-term rentals, and she pitches to them, we'll cover the first and last month lease, we'll cover the security deposit, we'll take the responsibility for any damages, let us rent your condo for 12 months and you tell us what you want. So if you want $3,000 a month, we'll get you $3,000 a month. We'll get the kids into it on November 1st. So if the kids default, her philanthropic organization takes the bite. She's found 15 places in the last 6 months, so that's housed, you know, maybe 50 people. So there's that kind of thing going on to try to undermine the Airbnb and VRBO issues.
And John, maybe talk about ADUs in Breckenridge, and I was also going to ask you, one of the things that is happening nationally as well is the micro apartment movement is kind of starting to address that very first level,
Right.
tenant. And I mean, we're talking units that are 215 square feet. But they are fully furnished. I mean, they have Murphy bed, they have a really cool kitchen. I mean, they may not have a king-size refrigerator, but they have a good refrigerator. I mean, it's a different lifestyle. It is starting to address that kind of entry-level tenant. But why don't you talk about the ADU?
Well, we kind of goofed up on the ADUs. ADUs are accessory dwelling units. And Breckenridge, much like you guys, we have a neighborhood called the Highlands, and they have 1,500 homes. They're all McMansions, 4,000 to 8,000 square feet, and 70% of them are dark 48, 50 weeks out of the year. So a huge loss of resources, a huge missed opportunity. We urged them, and when I got on council, we actually started requiring them to do accessory dwelling units, but we didn't enforce them. So they are just that. That's where a caretaker stays. That's where the mother-in-law stays. They aren't being rented to the workforce. So we kind of missed it on that. And so if you guys at the beginning are, thinking about entertaining big new homes in some of your nice neighborhoods or redevelopment, ADUs, accessory dwelling units, or mother-in-law apartments are a good way to go. And that way you disperse your workforce, which is nice too. So it's something that we didn't do a very good job on, but it's another arrow in the quiver that you can work on.
Are you guys taking any measures, or can you, say it that way, to kind of minimize vacation rentals in your area? I know, like, I'm from Glenwood Springs.
Oh, okay.
I've lived in Crescent Butte. I've lived in Telluride. I've lived in a lot of ski towns. I live in Girdwood. I know vacation rentals and kind of the really, really short-term weekend rental properties, like, that diminishes a lot of chances for property rental around here.
Yeah, we, first of all, HOAs in the state of Colorado trump the municipality. And many HOAs have said, nope, no VRBOs, no Airbnbs. They don't want the traffic, they don't want the extra cars, et cetera. But some neighborhoods allow it. But then the town steps in and says, okay, the trash has to be taken out on a certain day of the week, otherwise the bears get into it. You can only park 2 cars per bedroom. So if it's a 5-bedroom house, you can only have 10 cars there. We have a lot of big homes that are wedding homes where people have big events there. Where I used to live, I had a Winnebago sitting in my front yard. The people were there for the wedding and they were camped out. We were away. We come back Sunday morning and there's this frickin' Winnebago sitting in my front yard. The people are basically eating hot dogs on my lawn. And you know, they impact your neighborhood in a huge way. So I went to the town, I went to our HOA and said, you know, this is crazy. And then we went to the town and the town said, yeah, we'll back you up. And so we created a rule that you couldn't do that anymore. But not everybody feels that way. Not every big home owner feels that way. They want to use their home, their big home, as a revenue stream. And so there's some property rights issues there, and it's still a problem, but my wife's little program is helping some. But we've been hurt by Airbnbs and VRBOs. And it's not just we've been hurt because we've lost housing stock, it hurts the neighborhoods when all of a sudden this house across the street from me, 22 cars in our cul-de-sac, a Winnebago in my front yard. That's not a great feeling when you live in a nice little neighborhood. So it's there's an aesthetic problem, there's a I think philosophic issue, there's a financial issue, and there's a loss of housing stock. But we haven't solved that problem. And Colorado has a wonderful group called the Colorado Association of Ski Towns. We would meet every quarter in Crested Butte, Glenwood, Aspen, Telluride, Breckenridge, all over the place. Jackson is even a member, so is Ketchum, and we'd go to all these places. Whistler's a member too. And we'd talk about these problems, and I hate to say it, nobody's solving the VRBO Airbnb conundrum, but we're working on it. Yeah.
What local resources do you have for HOAs to revise any of their bylaws that might govern the use of Airbnbs, VRBOs, or short-term rentals?
Well, we have a retained town attorney, a guy named Tim Barry. He's been there for 30 years. He's fabulous. He will help, and the town will pay his rate. He works on a $175 an hour fee or something. And so, or they come to the council and we listen to their story and we go, talk to Tim, and Tim will help them. Or talk to our town manager and the town manager will help them. So we're open to that. We're happy to hear from the homeowners, the HOAs, et cetera, at least when I was mayor. And I'm sure the new mayor is doing the same thing. Yeah. Yeah.
How long is that deed restriction applicable to those annexation properties? Is that just for the first?
Forever. Forever.
Forever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's,
just keeping the property values down because you've got the 80% AMI.
yeah.
If I bought one, I could make $1 million and you could force me to do that, right, until I sold it to another
Well,
buyer.
first of all, if you listed it, and our housing authority saw that you were listing it for more than, 3% increments,
Right.
they would come in and say you can't do that, and you'd lose because you signed on the dotted line on that deed restricted property. If you own a market rate unit, you can sell it for whatever. And in the Wellington neighborhood, it's 80-20. At Vic's Landing, it's like 60-40. We have another one that's 50-50 because the guy did half of the stock at 50% AMI. So we've played around with it, but if you want to be annexed in the town of Breckenridge, you come in knowing that your first offer ought to be 80% deed restricted housing. I didn't tell you about another deed restriction, that's what I forgot, is a capital improvements deed restriction. You buy a $200,000 home, many of them in the Wellington neighborhood don't have garages. Well, in Breckenridge, a garage, two-car garage costs $30,000, just to throw that out. Well, you're only allowed to put a 10% capital improvement into your property and then ask for that in the selling price. So say you buy a $200,000 piece of property, you put a $30,000 garage on it, you've got $230,000 in there, you can only sell it for $220,000. So you just lost $10,000. So kind of onerous, but a lot of people were building carriage houses over their garages so they could rent. It added to the congestion of the community, but it solved some problems too in terms of more affordable housing. We have bus service to all those neighborhoods. You only have 3 places to park in those neighborhoods. So if you do put a carriage house there and you have 2 cars, a couple snowmobiles, you've run out of places to park stuff. So you have to kind of plan your little development plot out. And you got to think about what you're putting into the capital. You finish the basement. If you do it yourself, you can get under that 10% cap. If you hire it out, maybe not so much. If you put a hot tub and a big deck there, you're pushing the envelope on that 10% capital improvement restriction. You know, I hate to sound onerous, but it's just, we get this creep thing where people put more and more money in it, and then they want $300,000 for a thing they just paid $200,000 for, and they're only allowed to sell it for $220,000, and they're really pissed. And
John, do you risk, I'm sorry, as people, when they move in, they're at 80% AMI, and as they live there a long period of time, and then they're higher wage earners?
no, they're pegged at where they bought in, but so it doesn't prevent them from getting raises, and it doesn't kick them out. Yeah.
I was going to ask, how many units do you have in Breckenridge today with your population of around 4,500?
Well, we have about 600 workforce affordable units. We probably need another 500 to really catch up. Another problem that I hope you think through, because we are doing it now, it's people like me. I built my first house for $237,000. It's a beautiful house, 4,000 square feet back in 1990. And I sold it for, you know, you can pick a number, but close to $1 million in 2009. So great. I was not a very successful dentist in my first 10 years. I have a good income now. It took a while to develop my dental practice. So I sold this home and downsized, and my home, which was affordable in 1990, at $1 million is not affordable anymore. So people like me who sell their homes and then move to a smaller place, I'm not adding to the inventory of affordable housing. Teachers that started teaching in Summit County in the mid-1980s and they're retiring now, they bought something for $150,000, $180,000. Now it's worth $1 million. They sell it. Well, a new teacher can't move into the community and take that stock. So you're always losing stock capacity because of people like me that are selling out. And it's not because I'm a bad person, it's just what happens. And it's not because any of you are bad people, it's just what happens with inflation, cost of living, salaries being relatively stagnant, and real estate just going through the roof.
What percentage of housing in Breckenridge is second homes?
I would have known that a year ago, but second homes, I'd say 60, 65%.
Right. And my longer question was, so we're probably 50-ish, I think, here. My longer question was, most of the things you've done here are because of the will and the powers that the town council have. As you probably know, we're not independent in any way. We're just a small 1% of Anchorage by population. So, any advice on how one should approach the problem when you don't have the sort of the levers of power that you had as the mayor of the town?
Well, I talked to Grace a little bit about that. To me, you have a structural defect. You're here, Anchorage is 40 miles away, and they don't really see that you have a problem, or they don't perceive that you have a problem. You know, short of seceding, which I don't recommend, I think you probably, I was suggesting to Grace, you probably ought to hire an attorney collectively that's skilled in municipal law, development, et cetera, who can help you through some of these issues. Do you have taxation authority? If so, what kind of taxes can you raise? What does the community feel like doing moving forward? Does the community as a whole feel that this is a problem and it's the train at the end of the tunnel with the headlight that's going to run you over? If it does, if the community wants to move forward, then I think getting some really basic advice on what your options are in this kind of odd political setup you have with Anchorage being they're basically in charge. You know, I don't know how you get around that. Breckenridge, you know, the whole size of Breckenridge is about the size of Girdwood, and you know, we just all know each other. We don't have a higher authority telling us what to do. So I just don't know how you get around that. But I think if you got good advice, you know, we have the real estate transfer tax, we have special districts, we have a sales tax, we have lots of revenue funding mechanisms, and we're very fortunate that we have all of those, and we had the political will. I think what you guys are trying to do and is try to ascertain, do you have the political will? If so, what are your options? And then I think you need an expert. You need an attorney and a land planner perhaps that can really show you how it works in your particular situation. Yeah.
I would actually like to speak on behalf of the disabled community, which I'm a part of.
Got it.
Or at least on behalf of myself and one of my close friends. Talking about the lowest income bracket, the people who work at the grocery stores and the bartenders and stuff. Unfortunately, I am in a very difficult position where that is my cap. I cannot get above that because I'm not qualified for work above that. My only tradable skill is in music and audio production, which unfortunately for me to succeed in requires that I have a house that is a little further away from people, does not share walls with neighbors, and allows me to make significant modifications to the structure. I don't need much square footage or space, but audio production kind of relies on the rules of acoustic physics, which you can't really cheat or get around as easily. And so I'm in a little bit of a difficult position, as well as the drummer of my band who works in the same deal. He is completely blind. And the additional problem we have, he lives at Creekside, which is currently supposed to be the affordable housing in Girdwood. The place he's in now, he's paying $1,000 a month for. He's living in a one-bedroom unit with another person. The other person is basically sleeping in the hallways. The unit's not really big enough for two people to live in comfortably. The problem is he claims Social Security because that is his only source of income. It's very difficult to get a job. It took me 3 years to get employment here. And on his end, it's even more difficult with his eyesight. Unfortunately, a trick with Social Security is if your household makes more than a certain income, which for him to get a place big enough for him and his roommate would happen, if you exceed a certain income for your household, they will cut your benefits completely. And so he's in a position where the cost of housing makes it impossible for him to afford housing, and there are not many options for him to move past that. And I am in a position where I unfortunately do not have tradable skills that allow me to work into a position where I can become independent financially or build my own business. So I was one hoping to at least put that out there and then maybe have that discussion or put even the possibility of thoughts on the discussion out there.
Well, it's, you know, our theory in Breckenridge is keep the housing close. So it's dense, it's close to public transportation, et cetera, which doesn't really fit your model with music and needing to be kind of not.
And that's part of the challenge for me, is trying to find a community that allows the space of Girdwood. I moved to Girdwood to get a little bit more away from that, but I moved to Girdwood because it was the right size to provide things that I needed. It was the right size that I could access the things that I needed. But it was spread out just enough that properties that would meet my needs, for example, in audio, are still available.
Right. Well, I don't, we, in all of our properties I showed you, they all have ADA accessible units, but they're part of a bigger structure. So I don't have a model for you. In Breckenridge, there's a community just south of Breckenridge called Blue River, which is where, that was kind of the neighborhood for starter homes, et cetera. That's where I built my first home. That doesn't exist anymore because those were built in the 70s and 80s, and now those homes are being torn down and McMansions are being built. So I don't know the lay of your land well enough, but if there's a place that is up some drainage that you could improve a cabin or something, I don't know.
When I moved here 7 years ago, on my income now, it would have been possible for me to buy a home that would meet my needs. 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, the place we were living in got sold, and we were nearly made homeless, myself and my roommate. And I started looking into buying a house. I'd managed to save up a fair amount of money, but the cost and the increase of housing in just the last 1.5 years has become completely prohibitive,
Sure.
and I ended up giving up and spending my savings on tools of trade in music and production, and hoping for something. But
yeah, I don't have a good answer for you. We've seen the same thing. Wages are here, housing costs are here, and it's fairly universal.
One more
Yeah.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In like a brief statement, I'm curious about, it sounds like you infringed a little bit, or you had conflicts maybe with public property or private property. Did you guys run across major lawsuits? What were your biggest mistakes that you guys ran into? Maybe the top 3 mistakes that you guys did as a development board during your time there?
Well, one, I've already said we screwed up the accessory dwelling unit concept. We didn't really latch onto that as well as we should have. I don't want to. We got into a battle with a landowner who wanted to build an airport in the middle of Breckenridge, on the north end of Breckenridge. He stripped all the density. He did it himself, and the local school district wanted a piece of his property. He tried to build an airport. The only airline that wanted to come in and out of Breckenridge, we're at 9,600 feet. It's a terrible place to fly an airplane. The airline said, we're not coming in. So his idea fell through. He couldn't build an airport, a commercial airport. So he had this property that had no density on it, no building rights on it, except for an airport. And the school district said, would you, the town of Breckenridge, help us condemn this piece of property? And we condemned it. And I wasn't involved at the time. It was 1995 or 6. So we picked up about 70 acres through this condemnation process. Do it over, I would like to have seen it been done in a more conciliatory way. So that's a mistake. And then another mistake was partly my fault back in 2001 when we started building that Wellington neighborhood thing. I was all into for sale housing. I wanted people to own a piece of the rock. Didn't do any rental stuff. And all of a sudden in 2005 or 6, we're going, we don't have any rental stock. So we were behind the 8 ball. And it wasn't all my fault, but I was one of the people that wanted people to own a piece of the rock. So those are the 3 kind of errors, I think, that we made. She had one over here, and I'll...
I looked it up. I was asking the source of funds for the Summit Foundation. It seems like these projects, just so everybody knows, to get 35, 40% AMI, it's really tough to get the project to pencil.
Yep.
And even those rents, like 60% AMI is what the Creekside project is.
Right.
So subsidy is key, I think. So.
Yes, subsidies come from the town of Breckenridge. The Summit Foundation helps out some. My wife is doing that.
Where do they get their money from?
They get it from what they do is the ski areas, all 4 ski areas donate 250 season passes. I don't know what it costs to have a season pass at Alyeska, but in Summit County to have a pass that goes to those 4 ski areas is about $600, $700. And they don't.
We're double.
Yeah, I know you're double. and I'll tell you even more about it. It's also good at a couple California ski areas. It's also good at Verbier, Switzerland. Sorry. Anyhow, we have this ski pass program. The ski areas give the Summit Foundation 200 or 300 of these, and they cost me, and I buy 1 or 2 every year, $3,500. They started out at $3,500 a piece. Now they're $4,000 a piece. So I buy 2 of them, and that money goes into this huge fund. So the Summit Foundation has a whole bucket load of money. But like you, we have a bucket load of nonprofits that are looking for money all the time. So it's very helpful.